Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Holistic Trauma Healing Podcast. I'm so excited if you're here with us today that this is just the beginning of a journey where you're going to learn so much goodness on healing trauma and healing all sorts of stuff with our experts in the field. And today we're focusing on the butterfly hug card. Why is it the butterfly hug card? The butterfly hug, as you'll read if you have that deck, and you can get more information in the description. It is a intervention that is part of EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And our guest today, Annia Raysberg, is a specialist. She's a consultant. She's an expert in EMDR and also has focused on and has expertise in working with substance use and abuse and recovery. Now, Annia is a special person. She came to the US at the age of 15 as a Jewish refugee from St. Petersburg, Russia. When she came here, it wasn't her family's favorite thing that she wanted to pursue therapy. But of course, as it is for some of us, it's a calling and we can't help ourselves. So she pursued psychology in undergrad, graduating in honors, and then again graduating with honors in her graduate program. And since then, she got her certification as a consultant in EMDR, and she uses EMDR in her work along with the EMDR flash technique. And she'll be talking to us about these topics. So without much further ado, let's get started. Annia, the first thing I would love to learn is, what is your story? How did you become a therapist? What inspired you? Share a little bit about your unique journey to this mental health field.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I became interested in psychology in high school and then pursued that in college. It wasn't something that was easy to do or like an easy natural choice because coming from Russia and being an immigrant, it just isn't a thing that anybody in my family was encouraging me to do. I tried other things. I tried some jobs in business. I tried law school and just none of it really appealed to me. And I eventually, ended up going back to grad school in psychology. And then I've been doing that ever since. So it's been 14 years now that I've just been doing that. As a young adult, I struggled with some anxiety and substance abuse, and I ended up finding my way into recovery 18 years ago. So that was a big thing that happened in my life and a really positive thing. And that's what led me to pursue the path of becoming a therapist. And then once I was looking for traineeships, I wanted to work in drug and alcohol treatment centers, pass on what I've been given, so to speak. And I really, loved working in recovery, working in treatment centers. And I did that for about 7 years.
Could you tell us more about that? What was it about having received that kind of support, having lived through the experience of finding your path to recovery that really inspired you to do this work and to focus on that early on?
Well, I think getting involved in the 12-step world definitely paved the way to working in treatment centers that I wanted to work in places that had that as part of what they emphasized for clients. But yeah, I mean, getting into 12-step recovery was absolutely the community. I was in San Francisco there working the 12 steps and then becoming a sponsor. And I just loved that connection, that intimacy, that feeling of helping someone else. It just gave me so much joy. And that's what, paved the way into the field and all of that.
So, for people who aren't familiar with EMDR or just heard of the term and would like to know a little bit more about how it works or what it is, could you define it for our viewers and talk a little bit more about the specifics?
Sure. Yeah, so I guess in simple terms, what we do, there's some prep work involved. So EMDR is 8 phases. So the actual eye movement stuff only happens in phase 4. So I could talk about that for a long time, but skipping to phase 4, what we do is we target a specific memory. And so I instruct a client to think about the memory, and then we either use eye movement. So in person, I use a wand. If I have a home office, so people come see me in person. So I use a wand and they follow it with their eyes, the tip. So for video, I send a link, and then they see a dot that moves across the screen that I can control on my end. Or we use butterfly hug. Uh, so anything that's bilateral stimulation can be used, doesn't have to be eye movement. And so what happens is, as the client thinks about the memory and we incorporate the bilateral stimulation, the memory gets reprocessed. So that's, in simple terms, what that means.
In terms of memories, would you say that certain memories or certain experiences are easier to process with EMDR than other memories?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest thing to process is what we call single incident trauma. So it's a specific thing that happened to you once, like it could be, a car accident or like sexual assault or just any kind of a one-time thing. So that is the easiest, most rewarding. A lot of times just literally, yeah, it takes one session and the memory gets reprocessed. So, for example, I had a client who was afraid to drive because they were in a car accident. And so they just sat at home and didn't drive. And so we reprocessed the accident. And so what happened is that the disturbance they felt when they thought about the accident, it went away. So they still remembered the accident and what happened, but they just didn't have that like physical sort of disturbance where they felt so paralyzed they couldn't get in the car and drive. And so they were able to get in the car and drive. So one time thing is always the easiest. Something that happened to somebody a lot of times, like an abusive parent or something that happened multiple times over a long period of time, I find is harder to process because there's just so many memories. And I imagine in your practice, maybe you've found the same thing. I'm curious, is that true?
Yeah, I found the same thing that with developmental trauma, with early childhood trauma, complex trauma, chronic trauma, which are these experiences of having multiple kinds of trauma since childhood, and these traumas that kind of pile on to each other, that I've experienced in working with EMDR, which I've also been doing for a decade, that it's harder to be able to process those. They don't process quickly necessarily, nor do we want them to. But I'll bring in some stuff like inner parts work, inner child work, somatic work. And that's my tendency in my holistic approach, is to weave all these things to meet the person whom we're working with, to meet their soul and their own wisdom, right? At where it is at. Like, what's the right blueprint for them? So tell me, what is it that you love about the flash technique? I would love to glean your wisdom and your knowledge and help our viewers understand how you work with the flash and what is it and what you love about it.
Yeah. Yeah, Flash is a newer technique that was developed in the last 5 years. It's now been backed up by research. So, what it is, we pick a memory, something disturbing that happened to you. Sometimes I actually use it on a future fear, like you have a presentation you're about. But let's say we use it on a memory. Like I had one client that was mugged, and that was really disturbing for her. And so we pick an image what happened. And then we switched to talking about something fun and engaging. And we're doing tapping while we do that. So the client tells me about maybe their favorite TV show, their vacation, their wedding, their pet, anything that's engaging and fun for them. And then when I say blink, the client blinks quickly like this. And so we talk about the happy thing, we tap, we blink, and then I instruct the client to pause and to think about the memory, that image that we identified, and then tell me what they notice. So usually the memory becomes more distant. Sometimes the image is less vivid. And they usually the suds go down. So maybe it was an 8, so now it's a 6. So then I have the client go back to talking about the happy thing. We tap, we blink, and then again, I pause them and check on the image. And then again, they usually report like, oh, now it's a 4. And maybe the image is now further away. And then we repeat that until usually the suds go down to a 0. So that's the basic setup.
So I would love for us to give the viewers or anyone who's interested an idea of what it would look like to experience the EMDR flash technique. And my thought is that I could do something that's not a big T trauma, but possibly something I feel really nervous about for the future. And if you would take me through the flash technique, then people could see and get a real felt sense of what it's like to go through that process. So if I presented you with something that I might be experiencing, would you be willing to do a flash exercise with me?
Sure. Yeah. So, what would be the target memory? What is the image?
Okay, my thought is to do it on this fear I have in the future. This I want to keep it something that's manageable and digestible for our viewers. It's could seem like a minor fear, but I'm sure it's really relatable. Even thinking about it, I'm finding myself holding my breath. So I'll take a breath. It's this tension and anxiety I get when I think about presenting the holistic trauma healing card deck and everything that I want to teach around it to other therapists, to other service providers at conferences. Because my vision and my mission is to get this information out to the world. So I'm trying to disseminate it in these different ways. And when I think about going to the conferences, I get really nervous to feel like I'm the center of attention. Like that makes me really nervous sometimes, even though I'm doing this podcast, being there in person, speaking in front of a crowd. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's pick a specific image. Can you picture yourself at a conference, or what is the image?
Yeah, that image is of me in the conference room, those rooms at conferences. And folks are coming in and they're putting down their bags and they're getting their seats or taking their seats. And then the clock turns, it's time now. And everyone stops, it gets quiet. And everyone looks at me and it's time to present. That's the moment. That's the intense moment right there.
Now, how disturbing does it feel? 0 to 10.
My number is an 8. That's the number that is coming up.
Okay. Okay. So now we'll start talking about something fun and engaging. So, what would that be for you?
Yeah, when you were talking about it, you mentioned a wedding. So I think I'll do the wedding because we had this funny ceremony.
As you tell me about that, when I say blink, I'll have you blink.
Oh, yes. Okay. So we were having the ceremony and I gave my mother-in-law the vows. And when I came up to the altar and asked them for her, she didn't have them. And the reason why she didn't have them is because she gave them to my husband's best friend, who was his best man. And he took them to the bathroom because he got pooped on by a bird.
And blink, blink.
Okay. And so ultimately, they were not to be found. And so I broke out into song and started singing, look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. And it became a sing along at the wedding. This is why my husband and I are together. We have that goof gene.
Good. So let's pause. You can stop tapping. So now you can close your eyes if you want and think about that image at the conference and tell me what you notice.
There's like a softer light around it. I can feel it.
Okay. Good. Let's talk more about the wedding.
Yeah. We also did a dance. We hired a choreographer and we did a 3-part dance with a three. It was the foxtrot and swing and merengue. And I didn't expect anything of the reception, but everybody was cheering. They had such a good time watching us do this choreographed dance with all these fancy moves. And they even told us it was like watching Dancing with the Stars. So it was a super lovely moment.
Blink, blink. Good. Good. Well, let's pause again. So you can close your eyes if you want and tell me about that image. Notice now.
It's a 6 now. It feels like a 6. And I can feel myself connecting more to everybody. There's more heart connection happening. And it's less about my self consciousness and more relaxed, like connecting with the warmth and the other people around me. Like that softness. Like I can breathe a little deeper. That softness is stronger too. It feels good.
And you said the status is 6 now? Okay, good. Let's talk more about happy stuff. Do you want to talk more about the wedding? It could be anything else. It could be a different thing.
Yeah, something different would be fun. I love dogs. I'm a dog advocate. I've always rescued dogs, and I have two right now, Simba and Nala. Um, Nala was a puppy when we got her, and she's so cute. She has these ears that would our evolution, we would call them. They would go in different directions, and Simba is so cute. He likes to have his belly rubbed, and when they're running through the fields, they're all smiling. So yeah, I love them so much. The image of them running through the fields and nature, and they're smiling, those big happy dog smiles, and it just feels so good. It's like I said, it's my happy place.
Like, good. Well, let's pause again. Think about the conference and the presentation. Tell me, how disturbing does it feel now, 0 to 10?
Actually more drawn to thinking about the dogs and even less about the conference. I'm having to try to think about the conference. So it feels softer. It feels a lot softer. I feel more hopeful. I feel like there's some more optimism around it and less anxiety around it. It's more like a 4 now. And we don't have to go to 0. I don't feel like today we need to go to 0. I just wanted to give our viewers and anyone interested to get a feel of it. So I think this is sufficient for today, but I feel a lot better. Yeah. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And the great thing about Flash is that it's not that it goes down just in the moment. Of the times, the memory gets, or the fear gets processed forever. So I usually check with the client next week or whenever we meet. And so if it is a single incident thing or like a specific fear, uh, well, with fears, it can come back because it's not a memory, right? And it's natural for us to have some anxiety. But usually, if we talk about something that happened in the past, a lot of the time with Flash, that disturbance, it stays at a 0. So that's the great thing about it. Because if you think about it, of course, we talk about a happy thing. I'm not going to be as stressed, right? There's no magic in that. But I think the magical thing about Flash is that that disturbance, a lot of the times, yeah, stays 0 forever.
I love that. When I studied the flash technique, I was listening to Philip Mansfield, the creator of the flash technique, who was my EMDR trainer, instructor, teacher. And he was talking about how the brain stores trauma. And the way he explained it for us science geeks is that the brain, the receptors that they theorize, that we're always looking for this threat. And so when we are accessing that part of the brain through EMDR, through bilateral stimulation, that the receptors of those parts of the brain, as though they were characters, are saying like, whoa, you're happy now at the same time. And there's like this short circuiting of, am I not supposed to be looking for a threat? Maybe I can back off because you're happy now and stop searching for a threat. It feels like it's resolved. And then it completes that trauma in that part of the brain where it's been stored. What's your thought about that?
To be honest, I think I'm not sure any of us know exactly what happens in the brain. I think a lot of things are theoretical. I just base things off of results. So yeah, don't focus so much on what happens in the brain and any of that. It's just, for me, it's more about the client experience. This is something I do. And then, so a lot of the times the results are really great. So that's what's, yeah, important to me. I read about different studies on EMDR and why it works, and so at the end of the day, it's interesting and theoretical, but I think it's the results that make me really happy, and that's what I base it off of. And I wrote a little article. It's on my website about Flash. I included some client examples of actual real clients and what the issue was, and then how Flash worked for them. Of course, I got their permission and names have been changed, but those are real clients. Yeah, so your viewers can go to my website, AnniaRaysberg.com, and read the article.
I love what you're saying about that. It's like both and, right? Where we don't really know what's happening. It's always theory around the brain science. We're not like these cells in there taking notes, but ultimately, like it's your experience that you can trust. So for me, or for some people who like to understand and to talk about and the part of the brain that's involved, that's helpful. But really, ultimately, It's your lived experience that you can trust.
Yeah. And I think just as a kind of a disclaimer with EMDR and Flash, even though I do see so many amazing results, there are situations where it doesn't work. So yeah, just to put it out there, I never know how somebody will react to Flash or EMDR. I have it in my paperwork. Disclaimer that we don't know for sure. So even though in most cases there are some positive results, sometimes there's these miraculous results that are really quick, but there are some cases where it either doesn't work or the person can feel a little bit worse.
It's so true. EMDR is amazing, and it's exactly what some people need at some point in their journey. And possibly it's exactly what someone watching this podcast needs. It's the specific key that's going to unlock the thing that's been stuck for them for a really long time. But it's not a panacea. It's not a one size fits all formula. Like EMDR isn't going to fix everything for everyone or even like support every trauma. I know that you have so much more to share, that we're just doing some touch points right now around how you can support someone on their path to recovery and how you use EMDR and the Flash technique. Anyone who wants to find you can find you at your website and find your article and glean more of your wisdom and knowledge. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And to everybody watching, from my heart to yours, thank you for being here, and take beautiful care of your soul and your heart. Until next time.
Hi everybody. Would you subscribe please? It'll make the whole world a better place. Or at least yours, I hope. Thank you.